Hi, my name is Craig Bird. I'm the president of the Southeast Military Museum, and we're actually just north of Estevan here at the secondary museum site, which is at my residence. And my primary collecting interest is militaria. So I've always kind of been a little bit of a pack rat, I guess. You just start to sway to the military side of things. Like I said, I joined the military when I was in high school, so spent the next 10 years with the Royal Regina Rifles in a part-time and then a full-time role before I got employed down here in Estevan. And every summer on the 6th of June, they would have a reunion with the veterans. It was kind of nice to see and talk to the veterans. They would probably talk to us more than they would their own family, just because we were members of the unit, you know, young, impressionable kids at that time. And just over the years, as I got to know more and more of the veterans, I started actually wearing a uniform that was from World War II. And because of that, the veterans would talk to me even more about their experiences. And one of the veterans came back and gave me his leather jerkin, is what they called it. It was a piece of his uniform that he had worn, and he gave it to me as basically a sign of appreciation for, you know, just talking with him and listening to the stories. And I still have that today, and that just kind of fueled the fire, so to speak, because most of the items that I collect have meaning somewhere along the line. Some of them, unfortunately, the meaning's been lost over the years, and I don't have the stories for some of those items, but a lot of them I do. And it's not because the item's new and shiny. It was actually used by a soldier, and he entrusted it with me to, you know, to keep that story and tell it in the future. It got to the point here where I ended up one year talking to 3 veterans, and we had the regimental history book that was done in 1946, and it had photos in it where the veterans were then pointing out, well, this was so-and-so, and this is where this photo was taken, and he was killed, you know, 2 or 3 days after this photo was taken, and that sort of thing. And out of the corner of my eye, when we were talking to these veterans, I saw some ladies that were just standing just down the hallway a little bit. And when we were done our conversation, one of the veterans left. The ladies had come over and had talked to me and told me that their husbands were the veterans that I was talking to, and they had never heard those stories from them before. They had never talked about any of that, and they were just kind of amazed that they had opened up to me and told me those stories. So ever since that point, it was kind of one of those, you know, striking the bells moments where, you know, I got stories that probably haven't been relayed to anybody else in at that time, probably 70 to 75 years. And not only did it kind of fuel that inner passion, it just kind of added to my, you know, I'm collecting this for a reason sort of thing. You know, you can collect militaria that's never been issued. It's a brand new, shiny, right out of the box. But to me, it's got more meaning when it came from somebody that actually used it, and it's got a story behind it. So anytime that I can pick up something that I can get the story behind, just, I don't know, it's way better because it has that story. Back in the day before everything was written down, that's how our history got passed along, is by storytelling. And nowadays, there are not a lot of veterans left. Most of the World War II veterans, if they are still alive, they're in their late 90s, early 100s. And who's there to tell their story? Until I started the museum up here in Estevan, we had no military present, and there was no military museum in the whole southeast corner of Saskatchewan. So I think it's important, you know, to keep their stories alive, you know, for things like Remembrance Day and just in general, because, you know, as they're gone, who's gonna tell that story, and who's going to teach the younger generation, you know, what they sacrificed so that we have it today. And it's just one of those things that, I don't know, it was a passion of mine, so why not, you know, pick up that mantle and take that story, since I was blessed with the story of some of the veterans themselves. And I think it's grown more passionate over time. I think it's always been with me. I've collected militaria for probably a good part of 40 years. And you look around with the stuff that I have in the museum, most of that's out of my personal collection, which eventually all my personal collection is going to end up in the museum. So we started the museum in, well, late 2018, early 2019, with the goal of being a proper, legitimate museum. We wanted to overall keep all of this history and make it bigger than just one person. My collection was here. I won't be around forever, unfortunately, so I needed to do some long-term planning with all of this. Plus, I like displaying all of the memorabilia that I've collected and telling the stories, so I thought this was probably a good avenue to do it. So on Remembrance Day in 2019, we actually had our local World War II veteran and our MLA cut the ribbon and officially open the museum on Remembrance Day in 2019, and we've been going ever since. Well, you can expect to find things like uniforms that belong to individuals from this area. We have some different type of weaponry, from rifles to bayonets to grenades to ammunition that soldiers would have used not only from the Canadian Army, but British, American, French, German, Japanese, that sort of thing. Again, all kinds of just little memorabilia, manuals, books, binoculars, personal items that soldiers would have used, photos of different veterans, some of them that unfortunately have passed away. We have medals that belong to a lot of the veterans there as well as all kinds of photographs from World War I all the way up to modern conflicts. Just a little bit of everything. Anything that was military related, you can pretty much find it. I've opened everything up to the public, and we educate the youth. So I go into the schools. We have an Air Cadet and an Army Cadet program here in Estevan. It got to the point where, well, there's other people that are interested in town too, so we opened it up to everybody. Our primary location is in the Estevan Legion. We've partnered with the Legion to put a roof over our heads, so we have displays in the small and the large hall in Estevan. And then because we weren't able to utilize as much space as we wanted, I ended up setting up this secondary site out at my residence so that I can showcase some more items. Plus, people can take a little trip out of Estevan here and have a look around and see and learn about some of the sacrifices of the Southeast. When you asked me to pick 3 of my favorite items, it was like, it's like a mother trying to tell you which is her favorite child. You just can't. 3 of the items that are of particular interest to me that I like here in this part of the museum, we have a MG08 15, which is a World War I machine gun that was actually captured by Canadians at a place called Hatchet Wood in 1918. And it was captured by the 52nd Battalion, which is an Ontario battalion, which is present-day Thunder Bay. And why that's important is we had a lot of men from this area enter that regiment as reinforcements. So there was a lot of Saskatchewan people in that unit during that battle at Hatchet Wood. And I was able to get the war diaries from the 52nd Battalion for that date, so I know exactly where the battle took place. And a lot of the people that were involved with it were from Saskatchewan. And that gun, after it was captured, ended up coming back to Regina as a war trophy. So it was gifted to the city of Regina for its contributions during World War I. And somewhere along the line, it ended up going into the garbage. And a friend of mine, who was also a veteran, saw it go into the garbage and saved it. And he had put it away for safekeeping at that point. And he ended up moving out of the country, and I got my hands on it. And he kept it with me and ended up donating it to the museum because he couldn't take it with him, obviously, because I did some research and found out some history on it. So something that was most likely captured by somebody from this area in World War I ended up coming back, getting saved, and put into our museum. I don't know, a whole lot of, fine details about it, but I know enough of the history that, it's saved, and we've preserved that history in a little part of Saskatchewan. 99% sure that some of the Saskatchewan boys from this area ended up capturing that gun at a cost. So it's kind of an honor for me to have it in the museum and preserve that chunk of history. And being that it was, related to Saskatchewan just makes it all that much better. The next item, in no particular order whatsoever, was what we call a tabby sight. So back in World War II, we actually had night vision. It was so ultra top secret at that point that there wasn't a lot of documentation running around, because they didn't want to have that information and technology to fall into enemy hands. So this is basically a World War II monocular. The way it works is it's got a 70,000 volt battery. It was sealed like a sardine can so that you couldn't get into it. And it amplified the ambient light at night and basically made you able to see at night. So it's just like watching a black and white TV, except it's in green and white. And this particular one was used by your combined operations and pilotage programs, kind of the predecessors to the Navy SEALs, but all your special forces at the time. So they would have this technology on, the rubber dinghies that are out in the water. They'd send your frogmen in to map out things like water depth and stability of the sand and dirt on shore, as well as defensive positions. They'd have a special flashlight that they would use to signal back to the boat, where they could relay all this information and basically make plans for like D-Day, for example. So all of this stuff, again, was so ultra top secret that a lot of these instruments didn't survive, because as soon as the battery was done in them, because they were a sealed unit, they were destroyed so they wouldn't fall into enemy hands. And then they were also given explicit instructions that, if there was a chance of being captured, they were to destroy that technology and dispose of it so that, it wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. So for these things to survive, the war, is a big deal. And then to survive till now is an even bigger deal, because a lot of them, just didn't survive. And as far as I know, I've only ever seen maybe half a dozen of them ever come to sale in the last 30 years. And the one I got here was from a gentleman in the UK that had fortunately run across two of them. He kept one for himself, and then he ended up selling one, and I was able to get a hold of it. And he actually, with today's technology, made his work. So he gave me the instructions on how to do that. So I actually cut the sight open, removed the original battery because it was long dead. And with the current electronics and whatnot, you can make a battery that replicates that much voltage, and mine actually works. So it's actually World War II technology, Generation 0 night vision, that actually works. And it's one of only, I believe, 2 in the world that are still operational. And I don't believe that there is another one in Canada, at this time. So that's how kind of rare they are. So it's kind of a nice, yeah, I've got the only one sort of thing. So it's kind of a nice kudos for our museum that you're probably not ever going to see another one. So the third item I have is actually a uniform. It belonged to Lieutenant Merrill Sam Taylor. And he was from Yellowgrass originally. They ended up moving sometime afterwards to Regina. And him and his brother, Neil Taylor, were actually going to the University of Ottawa when World War I broke out. And because they were going to university, the British Air Force at the time, the Royal Flying Corps, and the Royal Navy Air Service were recruiting people to be pilots, because university students having a little bit more education, they figured would make better, fighter pilots. So Sam, as he was known, Merrill, ended up going into the Naval Air Service. His brother Neil went into the Royal Flying Corps, and went overseas to England to train as pilots, and then ended up going into combat. Merrill was a naval aviator in a fighter squadron, and his squadron actually took part in the battle with the Red Baron, where the Red Baron was shot down. So it was his squadron that was flying around during that time. And although he didn't shoot down the Red Baron, he was up and flying at that time. Unfortunately, a few months later, he was actually shot down by another German ace and was killed. His brother actually was shot down as well by another German fighter pilot, but he survived and was a prisoner of war. And he had learned about his brother Sam's death while he was a POW of the Germans. So when the war ended, they came back, and both Neil, who was a rugby player in Regina, and Sam, who was also a rugby player in Regina. The rugby club you may now know as the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, is what it turned into. And Taylor Field was named after both of the brothers for their service during World War I. So we actually have his actual tunic that he wore in our museum as well. And luckily enough, we were able to get a hold of it, because the museum that had it was deaccessioning their material because of COVID. They couldn't afford to keep the facility that they were in, so they were forced to sell some of the memorabilia that they have. Ended up, again, getting into my friend's hands, and he let me know that there was some military stuff coming in from some of the museums that he had, and wanted to know if I would be interested in it. And a good conversation later with the museum, we were able to transfer that material from their museum that pertained to the military side of things. And they transferred ownership from their museum to ours, so that it didn't get sold and then dispersed. So we ended up lucking out, and was able to save a lot of the stuff from the auction block and have it showcased here. Luckily, it didn't end up on the open market to disappear into somebody's collection where it wouldn't be enjoyed by anybody. So yeah, those are kind of the three kind of key things that I like, just because, again, they have that Saskatchewan link and story, and we're not always able to obtain those links. So it's just something that, put a face to the object and tell a story to commemorate them and remember them. Being a collector for a lot of years, I've built up a network. I've gotten to the point here where I'll get emails from people I know in Europe. Hey, I got something that of interest to you, and it's just like, why are you even asking me? Just send it. Tell me how much it is, and we'll go from there. So it's just years of networking and building up relationships with other collectors, and again, talking to veterans. And I do public talks, and we put stuff out on social media. People come to me as well now, because they have stuff that's sitting collecting dust and they don't know what to do with it. And if the family doesn't want it, we have a home for it here, so that we can tell their story. And we've had several instances where the family, they've got quite a few grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and they want to start fighting over this stuff, and the parents don't want to split all of this memorabilia up and disperse it throughout the family. So there's other options. We can keep the military here, and they can get replica or replacement medals, for example, so that they can still have a piece of that family history there, but the integrity of the entirety of the story can stay together in one place, and then other people can enjoy it as well, and learn about the service of their relatives without having it split up into different segments. Well, I hope that the museum will ideally last forever. Again, the whole plan was to make sure that these items and these stories don't disappear, and that the memory of all of the people that they represent stay here, especially in the Southeast. And, you know, through telling the stories, recording the stories like this, and trying to reach out to as many people as we can, we hope that, you know, it lives on, you know, in perpetuity. And, you know, just trying to get the word out and, you know, make people aware that we do have a colorful military history around here, and that, you know, we're not warmongers or glorifying war by any means. It's to honor the sacrifice of a bunch of individuals, not only the ones that sacrificed their lives, but the ones that survived and came back, you know, and were part of our communities. And unfortunately, a lot of those people, you know, came back damaged because of their experiences, you know, from the war. And they don't tell their tales. Somebody has to. And I'm glad that, you know, I'm able to do that. We always accept items from individuals or from families. They can contact me through our website. It's probably the easiest. I have a contact page on there. They can put in their information. We also have an email and a phone number on the website as well. Doesn't matter what kind of items they are. We like to have as much history as we can with the veterans. One of the services I also provide here is finding military histories for a lot of the families, because again, the veterans didn't talk about their service, so I'm able to get their service records at the family's request, you know, if they're interested in pursuing some of their family history and what they've done, you know, through the course of their service. So the museum in the Legion part is open Monday to Friday from basically 9:30 till 3, Monday to Friday. If they do want a tour, they just have to contact me. If you have a little bit of interest in the military history, you know, school groups, church groups, seniors groups, anybody is welcome. They just have to give me a call. I rather do a personal tour with a lot of these groups, just because you get a little bit more information. It's nice to look at some of the things, but a lot of people don't know what they are or what they did, let alone the history behind them. And I like to thank you, Curtis, for coming out to do all of this anytime that I can get some interest and traction for the museum. You know, we're ever growing, and we just need to get the word out to expand all this stuff, because it's important to show and to teach everybody, you know, what's out there, and gain that interest, or, you know, it's going to be lost somewhere along the line.